Thank you for the federal funds that kept us going.
Thank you for helping with the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for helping to save our jobs.
Thank you for the federal funds.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I don't care who the president is. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, we don't have any excitement and fireworks today like Hope Cristobal's screen test or Joe Biden's State of the Union. No, wait a minute. That's not fireworks. That's comedy.
That was a bedtime story.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start right out with Zemi Kutney. And we have... Yeah, eat your heart out, Meet the Press. So there's a story in the Daily News today. Guam DOE asked legislature to waive 180 days in service learning requirement. Yeah, I got to keep correcting them. They're using the word waive wrong. Legislature doesn't have the ability to waive anything. What it can do is change the law. Can make it, and it did it last year. It changed the law. I'm having a little trouble with my headset here. We have sound, Jose? No sound? Okay, I think I got sound now, do I? Yeah, okay. Okay, last year, there's a provision in the statute that says that the kids have to have so many hours of instruction every year. It's a law. And it came from the Every Child is Entitled to an Adequate Public Education Act, which said that every kid was entitled to 180 days. But Joe St. Augustine and Narissa Underwood kind of mangled it a little bit to the point where it's kind of hard to know exactly what it requires now, but there is a finite number of days that kids are supposed to be in class, and last year the legislature just changed that law and said it didn't apply for school year 2021, and that's what the Board of Education and the department is asking for now. They're not asking for a waiver. A waiver means that the rule is still in place, but for reasons, for special reasons, the rule won't be applied. As an example, wow. Said jack on my headset. Am I transmitting now? Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so are you sure? I'm not getting any volume in my own head. Jesus. I mean, we'll take a short break here, a short equipment break.
Maybe switch it in.
Yeah, maybe try the other headset. See how that one works. Yeah, I had to turn it way up because I wasn't getting any Test 1, 2. Yeah, this is working. A bad cord, huh? Okay, so here we go again. We're back on the air. We had a little equipment failure there, but Jose, in addition to be the best producer in the talk radio business, is also very tech savvy. He knows how to unplug one headset and plug in another. Congratulations, Jose. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I went to school for that, Bob.
Very good. So, so a waiver means, as an example, let's say that for some kinds of jobs, there's a requirement that you cannot have a criminal conviction. And a candidate comes along, a meritorious candidate, maybe the criminal conviction was 40 years ago, et cetera. And in some lash-ups, the person that does the hiring may have the ability to waive a requirement. So the requirement stays on the books, but it's waived for that particular employee. If you understand how the military operates, you'll find a lot of circumstances where waivers are applicable. The Board of Education and the Department of Ed are not asking for a waiver. They're not saying leave the requirement in place, just don't apply it to us. They're saying change the requirement for this year. Okay, but who cares about stuff like that except me? I think if you're going to communicate, if you're going to make sense, you're going to make understood, you kind of have to choose your words carefully. You can't just say, well, close enough, because close enough only counts for two things: horseshoes and hand grenades. Okay, here we go. Anyhow, that's what the news story is about. And there's a quote in here: as policymakers and administrators, certainly as board members, we want to know that every effort has been made and that we won't use it as a reason as to why we're not maximizing the opportunity. That's from Brown, Senator Brown. I'm a little concerned about the fact that DOE cannot make the adjustments needed, especially when I see private schools, I see charter schools able to do that. And Amanda Shelton, I think Amanda Shelton actually decided what she was going to say about this before she opened her mouth. Amanda Shelton said, "We're happy that students are feeling that they're receiving the education that they're entitled to, and the teachers are doing an excellent job." Very good. Yeah. And of course, we know where the students are on this, right? We're happy that students are feeling that they are still receiving the education that they are entitled to and that their teachers are doing an excellent job. Well, first of all, feeling. The kids are feeling that way. Are they thinking that way? Have they decided that? No, but that's the way they feel. And then she goes on to say, hats off to them and thank them all for that service. But we want to ensure that no one is left behind in this process and that we're doing what we need to do on our end. Well, how about if you just don't do anything? That would be the best, pretend you're doctors. Hippocratic oath. First of all, do no harm. And I'm just not convinced that saying all of this flowery language, no, we don't need to make up that 24 days. If that's the case, then why horse around with 180? If 24 days doesn't make any difference, why bother with 180? And if I thought that perhaps my thought process was a little bit off when I read the Daily News editorial, I knew I was right. Here's what the Daily News says. Our view, waiving instructional service learning requirements makes sense. Yeah, I knew I was right when I saw that.
Nope.
Yeah, the Guam Department of Education has asked the legislature to extend the waiver of the 180-day instructional requirement for students, as well as a service learning requirement. I'm going to skip this whole service learning requirement because I think it's a dumb idea anyhow, and I'm not going to give it any more time than what it's worth. The request is sensible, as classes have been disrupted for the past 2 years. During an informational hearing at the legislature Tuesday, Superintendent John Fernandez reminded senators that students have only been in face-to-face classes for the past 3 months. In the early days of Wuhan virus, when there were no vaccines or treatments, closing schools made sense. Little was known about the emerging disease, but it was clear there could be serious consequences if a student caught the virus and brought it home to vulnerable family members. Today, it's clear that DOE is in a much better position to deal with future waves and variants. Our intention really is for the next year to try to get back to normal, Fernandez told senators. The past couple of months, we've been open for 5 days of instruction through the worst of the Omicron wave. Going forward, public health experts are predicting that we may see future waves, but hopefully not as severe and not as consequential as the earlier waves. Fernandez said with the precautions and the protocols that are in place now, we do believe that we're able to sustain schools being open and return to normal. Well, good, let's do it. That's good news for the community. Ultimately, the learning loss from the pandemic will affect not only students and their families, but the island as a whole. As Fernandez noted, it's a national and worldwide problem. In the meantime, adjustments have to be made for the students who weren't able to attend classes. Senators should grant waivers on these requirements, and the Department of Education should look for ways to compensate for the learning loss. How about 24 more days of class? Wouldn't that work? Yeah. What a radical idea coming here from Tall Tales. Yeah, especially after a poll of the students was conducted, and the majority of the students said it really wasn't necessary. So if the students don't want to do it, who are the adults to say you should do it? It just, yeah, I don't know what the world is coming to. You know, it's never been easy to get old, and it's not getting any easier now. These old-fashioned ideas like kids should go to school, and if they miss a day, they should make it up. I don't know. I know I'm way out of step, Jose. Okay, let's take a look at the card. And of course, we start out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And I think everybody pretty much knows the drill on that. Orange is the truth. Red is the narrative. And today I'm wearing a black shirt that has, let's see, no, it's got a red emblem on it here. Don't confuse. Don't ever even think that I would wear anything that's orange. All right, then we go to a violation of 36-34, and guess what government agency did it again? GVB. You know, these guys are serial offenders. Next on the card is 36-34 versus the Contractors Licensing Board. And all of you scofflaws out there who are saying we don't have to comply with that law about agendas being included in our notices of meeting, well, you may change your mind when you get to that one. And then right after that, we're staying with the Contractors Licensing Board. We've got CLB versus the buddy system. And following that, we've got the Guam Memorial Hospital versus the rain. I wrote it, Jose. It's GMH versus the rain. Yeah. And then we've got the Attorney General versus Forced Sunshine Law demands. Then we get up to the heavyweights here. Hokuk versus Manglotnia. All Stars versus the church. And I may get to civil society versus separatism again. And let's see, ACLU, some things that have been on the card for a while that may not even ever see the light of day. Okay, so once again, Public Law 36-34 says that when boards and commissions publish the 2 notices that they are required to publish announcing each of their meetings, in that notice, they must include the agenda of what will be discussed at that meeting. And the items in the agenda must be in sufficient detail to put the public on notice as to what is going to be discussed. You can't put, you can't have a category that says old business, and that's it. That would invalidate everything you do at your meeting. So here's the Visitors Bureau meeting. They're having a meeting of the Board of Directors on the 10th of March. And they've got 10 items on their agenda. Item number 9, old business. They just don't get it, do they? That's bad. That's number 8. Item number 9 is even worse. Item number 9, new business. A, open topics invited. So if you've got something you want the Visitors Bureau to do, wait till item number 9, and then you stand up out in the audience, just as though you were Paul Manglotnia up in Northern Marianas, and you say, Mr. Chairman, I would like you to do this. I would like you to spend $10,000 on the street in front of my restaurant, and here are the reasons why. And then the chairman can say, well, any comments on that? Do I hear a motion? That's what this contemplates.
Or if you just recently wrote some poetry.
Yeah, you could read
You're
that.
welcome to come up, because it's open for topics.
Yeah, open topics invited. It's just a screaming violation of the open government law. Well, you know, I've been announcing on this show to everybody, to all and sundry who pay any attention, that if you screw it up, if you don't do your notice correctly with the agenda part of it, whatever you do at your meeting is going to be void.
And it looks like they're going over some Q3 marketing plans. Looks pretty
vague.
important.
Yeah.
But those are all going to be thrown out.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so if you ever had any doubt as to how this stuff works, here it goes. This is from the Post. License Board's $25 million fine against solar contractor void. Now remember when that contractor was, and I'm still not, I haven't found the contractor guilty yet, but contractor was building that solar farm out in the Marble area, and runoff water got away, ran into Marble Cave, really screwed up Marble Cave, did a few other things, and the contractor's licensing board very quickly snapped to and said, we're fining you $25 million. I think EPA could only do $150,000 because of their statutory limitation. And I suspect that all of the folks over there at the contractor's licensing board shop were gloating, saying, we showed those guys what the contractor's licensing board is all about. Ha, ha, ha. Well, here's the rest of the story. The 60 megawatt solar power farm in Manila, as you were, well, the Guam Contractors License Board voted last September. They actually had a board meeting last September. I think that was the last one. I figured, my analysis is they were so proud of themselves after they slapped that $25 million fine out there. There's no sense in us meeting for another 6 or 7 months. We'll just rest on our laurels, or our laurels, perhaps. Well, the Contractors License Board voted last September to issue a $25.5 million fine against Samsung and EC America, Inc., the contractor for the controversial solar farm project in Manila. The meeting in which that decision was made was voided for failing to adhere to updated requirements of the open government law. Now, the Contractors Licensing Board slated to meet March 16 to discuss the Samsung case again. Public Law 36-34 requires agencies to broadcast public meetings and to publicly announce agendas. Otherwise, their actions are considered void. The law was enacted June 11, 2021, and was to be effective 30 days out, or about mid-July that year. The law's implementation hasn't been the smoothest. Thank you, Attorney General Even Camacho. It should have been smooth because he pretty much took a hands-off approach. Whether it was due to improperly published agendas or not broadcasting meetings in the early months following the effective date, agencies such as the Contractors Licensing Board and the Civil Service Commission, and even larger agencies, including the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority, have had meetings voided because they did not follow all the open government law requirements. I don't like this when people do it, but I just can't resist. I told you so. It's Robert Karen Klitzkie said, yeah, I told you so. Yeah.
So are they automatically voided, or does somebody have to bring up something to someone?
Well, that's the old, if a tree falls in the forest. If a man said something in the forest and he's wrong, and his wife, if a man says something in the forest and his wife isn't there to hear him, is he still wrong?
Yeah.
It's the same question. So yeah, it's void, but until someone raises the issue, the fact that it's void will not have any effect. And that's why I say it's a colossal monkey wrench. If I were Protehi Latexan, I would watch those notices like a hawk, because they can, every one of these meetings for that new hotel up at Two Lovers Point, they could veto. I mean, yeah, they could throw monkey wrenches in those in the works there when the notices aren't correct, and that's the mayor of Tamuning. Okay, Dededo Mayor Melissa Savares and some of her colleagues recently expressed concerns with the law, as its requirements were taking away resources that could be used for other priorities. Wow, that's a heavy argument. I wonder if the mayor of Molesu helped her with that one, Ernest Chargaloff, who has such a way of just cutting right to the heart of a controversy, right? Dededo Mayor Melissa Savares and some of her colleagues recently expressed concerns with the law, as its requirements were taking away resources that could be used for other priorities. Why do people care what we're doing in these meetings? We have more important things to do. Meanwhile, the Contractors Licensing Board is not the only regulatory body involved with Samsung over the solar farm project. The issue stems from mud flow and the alleged lack of erosion control measures from the solar farm in Milo. EPA issued a notice of violation of the contractor in July of 2021 after officials confirmed that approved erosion and sediment controls at the solar farm were not fully installed. Other measures were in the process of being installed, but the construction was already well underway. Stormwater runoff impacted nearby properties and the historic Marble Cave. However, EPA could only levy a $125,000 fine against Samsung due to regulatory restrictions at the time. The contractor appealed the notice of violation in mid-August. The Office of Attorney General also launched a lawsuit against Samsung and the project owner KEPCO Manila Solar LLC over the environmental issues which remain pending. So although CLT, the Contractors Licensing Board, really had bragging rights over EPA. EPA only fined those guys $125,000. We hit them for $25.5 million. Hooray for the CLB. Hooray for the Contractors License Board. However, a simple arithmetic lesson now shows that $125,000 is almost infinitely more than $0, which the CL Contractors Licensing Board gets stuck with because they don't know how to follow the law. So, Melissa Savaris, you ought to read this. You ought to have this posted in your office, Melissa Savaris. All right, let's continue on here. More Contractors Licensing Board. And let's take a short break here.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
$15 might not get you that far, but Chili's is bucking the trend with $15 meal deals. At Chili's, $15 gives you not one, not two, but three-course meal deals complete with a drink, a starter, and an entree. Mix and match three-course meals 15 ways to Sunday with soup, salad, or chips and salsa to start, and ranchero chicken tacos, honey chipotle crispers with rice, bacon ranch quesadillas, or personal fajitas for the main course. Build your own $15 meal deal at Chili's. More life and great value happen here.
Attention, tailgaters. It's time for you to get a new tail to gate on. It's a fact. They got a 2021 model clearance going on all kinds of your favorite Nissan models, the Rogue Sport, Kicks, Murano, Titan, and they've all got great FM radios so that you can pick up tall tales in the afternoon. 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on Nissan. Zero down Magic tailgaters. Learn more by visiting NissanGuam.com.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Yeah, so this is the Contractors Licensing Board versus the buddy system. In a unanimous vote, the Contractors Licensing Board on Tuesday rescinded 2 actions taken by former CLB Executive Director Cecil Buddy Orsini. If anyone was properly named, it was Cecil Buddy Orsini. 2 actions taken by former CLB Executive Director Buddy Orsini without formal board approval related to the contractor's license status of Menzies Aviation and Technologies for Tomorrow. At the special board meeting, CLB investigators said Menzies and TFT didn't have licenses with the board based on reviews conducted prior to Orsini signing the questioned documents. This means that the board still must resolve the contractor's license requirement for government contractors and whether it was formally adopted a requirement for a specialty contractor's license. The board has not met since August of 2021. The other story said September. Yeah. I guess they just met in September. Well, I guess in a way they didn't, right? Because their agenda was faulty. So, yeah, when is a meeting not in a meeting? When you don't have a correct agenda. However, in November and December 2021, Orsini signed and issued separate findings and decisions, documents on CLB letterhead about Menzies and TFT's contractor's license status upon the request of 2 other bidders with pending procurement appeals. JMI Edison and G4S Security Systems asked Orsini to issue documents that talked about the status of the 2 other bidders' contractor's license status, and they used the document to help bolster their procurement appeals with the Office of Public Accountability. Acting CLB Executive Director Linda Ibanez, who may be added to my good guys list, right? On Tuesday, reminded the board that in August 2019, the board granted Orsini the authority to issue decisions without board approval. So the new executive director comes in and says, hey guys, look what you did back in 2019. During discussions, board members said it wasn't a blanket delegation of authority. They said the moment there were questions about an application, findings, or related matters, Orsini was supposed to come to the board for action. Now, I looked for that paper on their website. I couldn't find it. But this all depends on the wording, the language of the delegation. I'll get to the propriety of the delegation in a minute. Orsini, quote, exceeded his authority to issue a document titled Findings and Decisions Without Board Approval, and despite questions raised by two bidders, Assistant Attorney General Thomas Keeler said at the special meeting. So counsel said he exceeded his authority. Keeler, counsel for the CLB, said Orsini's actions failed to afford the other bidders or other parties the opportunity to appeal those actions before the board. Well, if the board is supposed to make the decision initially, well, anyhow, let's go on with this. Acting CLB Chairman Bernard Beneventi and other board members unanimously voted to rescind Orsini's findings and decisions about the contractor's license status of Menzies and TFT. CLB management and staff would still have to complete their findings and investigations into the license status of the two contractors and then present those findings to the board for action as early as March 16, provided that the contractor's licensing board can get out a proper notice of the meeting, which is not as necessarily a sure thing. Orsini resigned on February 3 at the request of the governor's office after OPA's procurement decision detailed Orsini's alleged involvement in the contractor, fraud, and misconduct. OPA rejected Menzies and G4S appeals because of the alleged fraudulent documents that Orsini signed and were presented during the appeals process. The Guam International Airport Authority selected Menzies as contractor for the operation and maintenance of the airport baggage handling system. Now, I talked about this before. When you're talking about operation of a system, do you need a contractor's license? I'd say probably not. When you're talking about maintenance, maybe, just maybe. But it's not the kind of thing that a faceless bureaucrat should go out and make. If you have a board or commission, this is a classic kind of decision that should come before a tribunal. One man is not a tribunal. But JMI Edison, which also responded to the procurement, said Menzies did not have a contractor's license on what JMI Edison said was a $31 million airport baggage handling system. This conclusion was never in doubt, as the system comprises more than 300 units of 480-volt electric motors, nearly a mile of conveyor belts, hundreds of electronic sensors, and numerous 480-volt electrical controls. Well, I know what all of those words mean, and I come back to what I just said. Maybe they need a contractor's license, maybe not. But I don't think the average person just reading that list of stuff is able to say yes for sure or no for sure. That's, I think, the reason we have a contractor's licensing board. And some of the people on that board are ex officio members because they know this stuff. The airport earlier told the Post that it hired Menzies under emergency procurement because of the still pending procurement appeal. So they got to run that baggage handling system, and if there's an appeal going on, well, we'll go out and do an emergency procurement because of the appeal. So none of this stuff is working very well, and it really all comes back to one guy. One guy, Buddy Orsini, right? If Buddy Orsini way back then had said, I can't do that, guys, the board hasn't met, you're on your own. Because I remember talking about this on the program before. When it's a procurement appeal, BJ will hold off doing a decision on it if he finds out that the matter is stuck at some other agency. And that makes good sense. So as long as the board at the Contractors Licensing Board isn't meeting, and as long as Buddy Orsini is carrying on like he did, nothing is going to go anywhere. So I can understand why the airport is saying, we can't be doing this. We can't put a sign out there in the carousel that said, we can't deliver your bags because we have a procurement appeal pending. Okay, Department of Public Works Director, Public Works Director Vince Areola asked CLB Contractors Licensing Board members, as you were managers, about the investigation they had done on Menzies, which Areola said he believes may have been a contractor with GIA since 2015. The investigator said 2 contractors have business licenses, but not contractors' licenses from the Contractors Licensing Board. They said the document that Orsini issued to JMI Edison was a result of prior findings because the investigators were in the process of conducting a new review at the time. DPW's Areola, an ex officio member of the board, said a big part of the issue is the label, quote, findings and decisions in Orsini's letters. It should have been titled findings because the board had not made a decision, even if there were findings. And if there were findings, let's have a look. Let's see what they look like. The fact that the investigator came along and said, well, we're still working on it, suggests to me no findings. JMI Edison said the only potential error in the prior investigations were the titles of the documents and the failure to include the word preliminary in what were otherwise confirmed findings that could be corrected. Well, it's your fault, JMI Edison. You drafted it. You didn't put the word preliminary in your drafts. And yeah, you didn't do it. So, there's a rule, one of the canons of statutory or contractual construction is that you construe the language in a document most severely against the scrivener. So if JMI is the one that drafted the order and they didn't put preliminary in their order, they're stopped from complaining. JMI, in its effort to challenge the selection of Menzies, is said to have convinced Orsini to have the board investigator section issue certain findings and decisions that the airport's selected baggage handling contractor does not have a Guam contractor's license to qualify. OPA showed a series of documents under Orsini that the licensing board issued by copying and pasting the draft JMI Edison suggested email. Yeah, that's the only mistake. JMI, that's the only mistake we made. And you're going to hold that against it after we worked with our buddy? Now, if the AG just lets this go, we can look forward to sequels. This is the kind of thing that the AG should come down on hard. Otherwise, we keep stumbling forward. Well, yeah, you shouldn't have done that, and we'll find another spot for you in the government. Don't worry, Sonny. Do you know anything about people with disabilities? We'll send you up to DISIT or someplace like that. Unless the Attorney General gets out there and does his job. Yeah. Well, I expect that his idea of a job will be to file a suit against some findings of the Contractors Licensing Board that were done correctly, and then ask for a declaratory judgment saying that Buddy didn't do anything wrong. All right, next on the card is GMH versus the Rain, but let's take a short break here and we'll come back to GMH.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
I did a little dance there during the break just to kind of liven things up. All right. GMH versus the Rain. And this is a story that ran in the Post. GMH roof repair contractor to be selected 2 years after structural failures noted. Almost 2 years after an Army Corps of Engineers assessment concluded that Guam Memorial Hospital's roof had reached a point of failure, GMH is in the process of selecting a roof repair contractor who must have a contractor's license, a real contractor's license. The hospital has also finalized plans to demolish the Z Wing, the oldest section of the hospital. The procurement is in the award phase, and GMH anticipated beginning the demolition permitting phase in February. In its April 2020 report, following a structural assessment, the Army Corps of Engineers, I wonder if Tom Poole is listening, Army man, Colonel Tom Poole. By the way, according to what I heard on Ray's show this morning, he's getting ready to retire at Department of Agriculture, not today or tomorrow, but he claims to be a short-timer. Yeah, he says he's getting short, and that's something that doesn't mean a whole lot to people that haven't done some time in the military, but being a short-timer means you're getting close to retirement or discharge.
Oh, got it, yeah.
And it's referred to in military terms as short. Hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm short. I'm really short. How short are you? I'm so short that I'm not even going to make a head call because my discharge papers might come through when I'm sitting on the toilet. So that's Tom. I hope he's going to stay active here. He's going to continue to be a tailgater even after he leaves agriculture. But anyhow, Army Corps of Engineers listed the following major items of infrastructure concern. 1, failure of the roof and exterior window assemblies. 2, Z-Wing has structurally failed and is unsafe. 3, A and B wings need structural analysis. 4, non-compliant aged electrical distribution system. Quote, GMH will require $21 million immediately for repairs to support the reaccreditation of the facility and eliminate hazards to life, health, and safety, according to the Army Corps of Engineers report. In February 2020, Guam law authorized $10 million for GMH to repair or replace its electrical panel and repair the roof, among other items. Since 2020, however, we've had some remarkable weather here, and it hasn't rained not even one drop. So there was no sense in fixing the roof. In a press release where's my horn there, Jose? Yeah, in a press release last week, GMH announced major projects are close to getting awarded to ensure the longevity of the current critical infrastructure until the new hospital is designed and built. These major projects include roof repair and other work that will enhance the structural and mechanical integrity of the hospital during heavy rainfall, mitigating against potential leaks, according to GMH. The project is in the award phase. Quote, "It's no secret our building is old. We've been working to maintain it for years, and these major capital improvement projects undertakings will ensure this facility is fully functional with a safe environment of care until our move to the new hospital," said William Kando, Hospital Associate Administrator of Operations, in a press release. The hospital has a really high-powered director of communications, right? What's her name, Jose? May Habib. Yeah, that'll around 70 grand. And that's all we're getting is a press release?
I want a graphic.
Yeah, well, press release. Maybe they were just trying to appeal to PNC. Maybe they figure if they can get coverage on PNC, that's all they needed.
I find that interesting that he's very confident that there's going to be a new hospital.
Yeah, he's already made up his mind on that one. The project has multiple phases that include demolition of 85% of Z-Wing, salvaging a small footprint on the first floor to be used for additional office space. Yeah, that's what they need. They need more office space up there. Yeah. And an expansion of parking spaces. Yeah, they got to have more parking spaces at GMH. Beds for patients, surgeries, not so much. In addition to major capital improvement projects, the hospital has taken on multiple small-scale repairs and upgrades. These include operating room surgical light updates, ventilation and aircon upgrades, and the emergency room rotunda ceiling renovation, according to the GMH release. So, you know, we've known for a long time that the roof, we didn't need the Army Corps of Engineers to tell us that the roof leaked. I don't remember how many times I've seen pictures that ran in one of our 4 media outlets of, you know, buckets out on the floor to catch the rainwater that was dripping through the ceiling.
I thought that was a water feature. Turns out
this was not a bug, it was a feature.
It was a leak.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
oh, the stairway also gets flooded.
That's right.
Like a waterfall.
Yeah, exactly. So then the Army Corps of Engineers comes along and tells them, and it goes public, and here we sit 2 years later saying, well, you know, we're gonna go out for contract on those things. In the meantime, is it still raining on Guam? Yeah. Once upon a time,
yesterday and this morning.
Once upon a time, I would have asked the rhetorical question, is it still raining on Guam? And answered it with a rhetorical answer, with another rhetorical question, is the Pope Catholic? But that one doesn't work so well anymore.
I did this.
Yeah, that used to be a really good one, but it doesn't. Now you got to go to where the bear defecates.
I just loosened my collar.
Yeah. Okay, so much for that. Next on the card, we've got All Stars versus the Church, talking about the Pope, right? And this is a series of publications starting out with February 28th and the Post. New mediation to try settling local clergy sex abuse claims. And bringing up to date on this, the Archdiocese propounded and broadcast and attempted to market a legal theory that the schools and churches on the island were not available for liquidation to compensate the creditors in the bankruptcy, because although the title, the legal title, the fee simple title to the schools and churches was in the corporation sole, now known as Bishop Burns, Archbishop Burns. Archbishop Burns may have held the naked legal title, but a constructive trust had arisen as those schools, each school and church was built, and that the equitable title was vested in the individual school and church. That was from the get-go. That was a long shot, because there isn't any documentation that would substantiate it, as far as I know, and as far as I know, the case law makes it really difficult to make such a claim stick. But that was the Archdiocese plan, to say that the schools and churches were not available to the bankruptcy creditors because they really aren't owned by the Archdiocese, in plain language. They're owned, each school, each church is owned by the parishioner or by the parish in which the school is located or the church is located. And they lost. They lost big time on that, which means all the assets of the church are now going to be available to pay the creditors. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But first of all, let's talk about the all-stars here that came out and were pretty critical of the way the Archdiocese handled itself in this particular case. I start out with Jungle Watch, which is our friend Frenchie. And Frenchie says, which way shall Judge, and this was before she ruled, which way will Judge Gatewood tilt the balance? After 6 days of laborious testimonies, the lawyers for both parties were called to present their closing arguments. Caldy, for the plaintiffs, did a very professional, detailed, and logical presentation. It was punctuated with case law, clearly understood civil law, and easy to follow the argumentation. After a recess, Camacho did his closing arguments. That's Vince Camacho. I wished I could tell you that he did a good job. Rather than addressing the technical issues, he gave an historical and cultural presentation, switching at times to Chamorro and starting to ramble without aim. So let me go again. Rather than addressing the technical issues, he gave a historical and cultural presentation. Well, I don't know why that didn't work. It works every other time. It's part of the culture. And anyone who would stand up and say, I disagree, is going to get canceled, right? The judge tried desperately to throw him a lifeline on several occasions. Let's break for the halftime show, and we'll come back to All Stars versus the Archdiocese.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
President Biden promises to attack inflation. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News, delivering his State of the Union message to a joint session of Congress.
The president maintained the way to ease economic pressures at home is to build more at home and not rely on supply chains abroad. The jobs and innovation that result, he says, will bring down inflation. He says economists refer to it as
increasing the productive capacity of our economy. I call it building a better America.
He says lowering costs for American families will become his top priority. and he hopes to bring down the highest inflation America has seen in decades.
Fox's Gernal Scott in the GOP response. Iowa's Governor Kim Reynolds said the president is too isolated to understand the economic problems facing Americans.
The Biden administration believes inflation is a, quote, high-class problem. I can tell you, it's an everybody problem.
The speech not without its gaffes. At one point, the president saluted the bravery of the Iranian people in the face of the Russian invasion. In Ukraine, the Russians' aerial assaults continue.
Vladimir Putin increasing his bombardments on urban areas, on residential areas, and he has warned, his defense ministry has warned that that will continue today. And there is growing fear now that he's going to pull back and continue this crushing bombardment of built-up areas. They also rained down rockets yesterday on the second biggest city of Kharkiv, while Russia's defense ministry urged residents to flee today, saying it was going to strike unspecified areas within the city.
Fox's Benjamin Hall in Ukraine. Oil prices climbing sharply Tuesday, up $5 a barrel to reach $109. Iran has apparently failed a second time to launch a satellite into space. Satellite images of the Khomeini spaceport show a rocket on the launch pad scorched and damaged. America is listening to Fox News.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
In response to the invasion of Ukraine, several large global corporations are ending their investments in Russia.
Going from being an exciting emerging market 30 years ago to virtually being uninvestable overnight, you have a growing long list of global companies pausing or pulling out of Russia. And yes, that includes the single largest foreign investor in the country, BP, that's walking away from that $25 billion investment in Russian energy giant Rosneft. You have other oil majors, including Shell, Norway's Equinor, Total, ExxonMobil, all pulling out. And that essentially ends decades of investments that started in the 1990s for these oil giants. Meantime, you have major car companies halting sales. Ford just announcing that GM's pausing on their 3,000 cars that they ship each and every year.
Susan Lee of the Fox Business Network reports Apple has also banned the sale of its products in Russia. Twitter will block Russian state media from its platforms, and Google is blocking their apps on the Play Store. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has vanquished several challengers in the state's Republican primary. He'll seek a third term in November, but faces a challenge from former Congressman Beto O'Rourke, who's won the Democrats' primary. Republican Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton forced into a primary runoff against George P. Bush, the nephew of former President George W. Bush. Arizona's highest court says the family of a 9-year-old girl killed in a car crash can sue an automaker for what it didn't do.
The mother of Vivian Varela was driving when she was rear-ended by a Jeep on a Phoenix freeway 7 years ago, killing Vivian. The Arizona Supreme Court ruling her family can sue Fiat Chrysler because it did not install optional emergency braking devices and that it should be standard equipment. The family lawyer claims the devices prevent most rear-end collisions. Fiat Chrysler is saying they disagree with the ruling. Chris DeMeo, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Half a day. This is Jade Uggan from Security Title, and in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here is a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of giving part of your property to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi I Tanonmu. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
So here we are, a big halftime show, really a treat here on Tall Tales, as is everything on Tall Tales, including the new Nissan commercial. Tall Tales, it seems like, you know, once you hit a level of near perfection, it's hard to make it any better, but we keep doing it, don't we, Jose?
Every time.
Every time. Okay, back to the All-Stars versus the Diocese. I left off here. After a quick recess, Mr. Camacho did his closing argument. I wished I could tell you he did a good job. Rather than addressing the technical issues, he gave a historical and cultural presentation, switching at times to Chamorro and starting to ramble without aim. The judge tried desperately to throw him a lifeline on several occasions, admonishing, for example, to give her legal reasons to rule in his favor.
You kind of have to. It's a court.
Yeah. Well, I probably mentioned this before, but the old-time lawyer, you know, the guy about my age, old-time country lawyer, had been around for a long, long time, and he was given the new preceptor in his office some hints on how to handle trial work. And he said, you know, you got law and the facts. So when the law is against me, I pound on the facts. And when the facts are against me, I pound on the law. And when the law and the facts are both against me, I pound on the table. And I think that's kind of what Camacho was doing there, pounding on the table.
He was trying to be Matlock.
Yeah, trying to, you know, the cultural aspects. Every time Camacho said, as you were admonishing to give her legal reasons to rule in his favor, every time Camacho said he understood but continued with his rambling, illogical and poorly prepared statement. It was painful to watch. After another recess, it was time for redirect. Now, let's turn on the Law and Order notebook here, Jose. Some terms that you'll hear when people are talking about a trial. You have a plaintiff and a defendant in a civil case, right? When you question your own witness, when the plaintiff questions a plaintiff witness, it's called direct examination. When defense counsel questions the plaintiff's witness, it's called cross-examination. You don't cross-examine your own witness except in some rare circumstances that we needn't go into right now. When it's time for argument, there's closing argument, and it's counsel and then plaintiff, or it depends. Probably defendant, plaintiff make their closing arguments, and then each of the two will have rebuttal. So after the first round of closing argument, you have rebuttal, and if the court allows more after that, it's called rebuttal. Rebuttal. It sounds like an Englishman, doesn't it? Yeah, I say rebuttal. Yeah, so here we go. So I think what Frenchie means here, it was time for redirect. He means time for another counsel. After Caldy handled himself very professionally with precise, concise arguments and clear explanations to the judge's questions, he did not lay into Camacho as he could clearly have done so. This was then time for the second, what Frenchie calls redirect, this time for the defense. Another lawyer, Mr. Talbot, who was obviously much better prepared, this is for the Archdiocese now, did a more eloquent and appealing presentation, but admitted he could not provide precise case law. He pleaded with the judge to take a, quote, leap of faith. Arguing this case is an unprecedented case which needed an unprecedented ruling. And here, Frenchie's really clever here.
Alliteration.
Frenchie says this was a legal Hail Mary.
Which coincidentally is not canon law. They weren't allowed to speak it.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Same with the leap of faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what it sounds like is both counsel for Archdiocese are trying to hometown the case. Francis Knife, tomorrow, David, na ito Judah, fan. So Tadzer like Benderajo, put for border. It just isn't going to work in any court. Certainly not in a federal court. You don't go in there and say, well, yeah, we can't tell you any law, but come on, give us a break here.
Come on, man.
Yeah, no. Maybe that technique would have worked over there at the Contractors Licensing Board before Buddy left. But it's not going to work in court. After a 15-minute resource, the judge is coming back with her verdict. Well, it's not her verdict. Juries issue verdicts. Once again, Law and Order notebook here. Juries issue verdicts. Judges rule, right? Judges don't often rule from the bench, but they do sometimes. Sometimes. After a 15-minute recess, the judge coming back with her decision, and in a short statement declared for the plaintiffs, explaining the defendants failed to demonstrate their case. So the fact that in 15 minutes she comes back and rules from the bench tells you an awful lot.
That's pretty bad.
The judge mentioned that this was a Chapter 11 reorganization ruling, and that she hopes this will not eviscerate the parishes and the schools. She encouraged people not to have apprehension and for both parties to bring finality to all. She also encouraged all parties to meet with Judge Paris to settle. He's a judge, from Hawaii that has volunteered to act as a mediator here between the Creditors Committee and the Archdiocese. Mr. Elsasser made a statement on behalf of the Archdiocese and declared they shall try their best to find a way to bring closure to this process. Mr. Tudela, who is the chairman of the Creditors Committee, finished with new remarks by thanking the court on behalf of the 285 survivors, and made another very emotional declaration along the same line as his statement of yesterday, and prayed for healing and closure.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
Mr. Tudela was also a witness, also a victim?
He was a victim, yeah.
And he also is the head of the Creditors
Committee, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, well, that's the way it goes. If you have unsecured creditors, the unsecured unsecured creditors will form up a creditors committee.
And those are the victims.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the Bank of Guam is probably not an unsecured creditor, probably a secured creditor. Yeah, so that was Frenchy. And then we had another evaluation here from another Jungle Watch habitu, Tim.
Another heavy hitter.
Yeah, and this is what Tim says. Archdiocese attorneys let clients down. Tim posted a letter in the Guam Daily Post. Frenchy picked it up. It's on Jungle Watch right now if you want to read it again. Like shooting ducks in a barrel. That's what it looked. Shooting ducks in a barrel? Then you mean geese? Well, anyhow.
He's not from Alesso.
He's not from Alesso. Like shooting ducks in a barrel. That's what it looked like, at least from what I saw in the recent trial to determine whether churches and schools should be included in archdiocesan assets to satisfy its creditors. It was as if the church attorneys painted a target on its own witnesses and then instructed the other side to, quote, aim here. In fact, the attorneys for the creditors didn't even need to aim, just shoot. The easy targets were parishioners who appeared to have been instructed to sign declarations they did not write and then say they did. Now, I'm just wondering why declarations would be necessary at this stage of the game. If you're going to move for summary judgment, you establish a factual record with definitions, declarations and affidavits. And here's another little interesting tidbit. An affidavit is a paper that has the words on the bottom, subscribed and sworn to before me. Jack McClukenbach, Notary Public for the Territory of Guam. And the notary signs it and seals it, etc. And it's really a nice looking piece of paper. That's what an affidavit is. Now, we have a statute, and so does the federal courts have a statute, that you can do a declaration under penalty of perjury that has the same legal effect as an affidavit. It just needs to say somewhere in the document, I declare under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct. Sign it and date it, and it's as good as an affidavit. So when they're talking declarations here, that's apparently what they meant. So if a party in a civil suit is moving for summary judgment, you don't take testimony in a motion for summary judgment. The factual record is established by affidavits and counter affidavits. The moving party has his motion, and he says, these are the facts. And he lays out the facts with his affidavits. And he said, under these facts, according to these provisions of law, my client is entitled to judgment. And the opposite party has counter affidavits, maybe, or maybe he only says, under those facts, nobody's entitled to judgment. But if you're not going for summary judgment, I don't know why anyone would prepare declarations. And this becomes really clear when we get farther down into Tim's article here. It's easy to imagine the opposing attorneys shaking their heads in disbelief and their good fortune upon receipt of the copies of those declarations. This was trial gold, and it certainly was, because you know what those witnesses, either you know what they're going to say or what you're going to use to impeach them, and maybe both. The attorneys for the creditors had to do, all the attorneys for the creditors had to do was get the declarants to testify under oath that the words in those declarations were their own, and then proceed to demonstrate that they were not. And with maybe one exception, that's exactly what they did. So, Mr. Witness, I show you what is marked here as Defendant's Exhibit 14. Do you recognize this paper? Yes, I do. Can you read the paper? Yes. Are those your words? Yes. Are you the one that put those words on paper? Yes, I did. Tell me what paragraph 3 means. I don't know. That's the mental image I have of what went on.
Wow.
Yeah. The otherwise well-meaning parishioners did not even appear to know they were being impeached. Now, impeachment is a nice word. It's a word that used to hardly ever be in anybody's vocabulary unless they had an orchard out in back of their house. Peaches, apricots, walnuts, whatever, right? But since we got in a habit of impeaching presidents that had crappy personalities, not once but twice, even after they left office, and after we've impeached a governor in the Northern Marianas, people have become quite familiar with the word impeached. But it has a little different meaning in a trial context. And what it means in a trial is if a witness testifies to a particular fact, and with cross-examination, you are able to come back and show that he was untruthful, that you have then impeached the witness. And when you've impeached the witness on a material fact, you are entitled to a jury instruction that the credibility of that witness is always an issue. You don't have to believe anything he said. Now, of course, there's no trial here. It's the judge, but it's still the same principle. So, careful lawyer is always on guard. Lawyers prepare clients for trials. So when you are testifying, here are some things you want to avoid. Here are some things that you want to concentrate on. You don't tell the witness, you got to say that the rice was red. But sir, the rice was orange. I don't care. You got to say. That's something called subornation of perjury. So a lawyer can't do that. He can prepare his client's testimony, but he can't suborn perjury. And the standard preparation for trial is the lawyer will say, opposing counsel is going to ask you, did Mr. Klitzkie talk to you about your testimony? Yes, he did. What did Mr. Klitzkie tell you? He told me to tell the truth. Pretty standard stuff. Okay, so Tim says here that the otherwise well-meaning parishioners did not even appear to know they were being impeached. Slaughtered is more like it. Meanwhile, for the most part, the church's attorneys, who apparently permitted or even caused these declarations to be filed, quietly let their own people get roasted. In fact, from what I saw, the archdiocese may have had a chance to win this had it not permitted or perhaps even caused these declarations to be filed by persons who were not even a party to the action. I don't know. When? I don't know about that. But once the declarations were filed, the door was open for the other side to subpoena the declarants and examine them on the stand. It didn't take the creditors long to impeach their, quote, victims. Once the declarants testified under oath that the words in the declarations were their own, within a few questions, the attorneys for the creditors easily demonstrated that the declarations in whole or in part had been prepared by someone else. Now, I mentioned this yesterday. It's perfectly all right for a scrivener to put stuff on paper, but it can't be stuff that the scrivener made up. If a lawyer interviews a client and the client says 1, 2, 3, XYZ, and the lawyer drafts up a declaration or affidavit that says 1, 2, 3, XYZ, that's fine. But if the declaration says 1, 2, 3, 4, WXYZ, and it wasn't what the client said, subornation of perjury. Yeah. This made it easy to paint the church, once again, as lying, deceptive, hiding, and all the bad things that former Archbishop Apparan and his cronies left in their wake. Talk about healing. I was thinking about this the other night. I was talking with another Catholic member of the church here on Island, and And my thought process is this, so far Afferon has gotten away completely unscathed. He's probably living in New Jersey, being subsidized by the Generinis after doing tremendous harm to this diocese, and so far not a scratch on him. His reputation kind of took a thrashing, but he didn't have a very good reputation anyhow. So, and, Walter and I think 6 or 7 others, Walter Denon and 6 or 7 others who were abused by him are parties in this litigation. And had Afferon actually gone to trial instead of been shielded by this bankruptcy and been found culpable by a civil court, it might make it easier for all the rest of this stuff to go. Because I can imagine, I can't imagine, but I can hypothesize that these, how many, 375 victims are all saying, we're the ones that really were injured here. And the guy who did injure us, or at least allowed it all to happen, got off scot-free. Why should we be fair? Why should we be flexible? Why should we cooperate and try to preserve the church when the church isn't doing anything to this bishop and the courts aren't either? That's just my sense of maybe the way things could have worked out. Tim wraps up with this. Meanwhile, as one survivor testified, the lawyers have thus far collected $6 million and the survivors not a penny. And that's correct. And as the bankruptcy grinds on, the attorneys' meters keep on running. It's what they do for a living. You can't blame them. Bankruptcies are always lawyer intensive, and believe it or not, some of the lawyers that drag down the big bucks are bankruptcy lawyers. You'd think, well, I wouldn't want to get involved because those people don't have any money. But there was a guy named, I think his name was Howard Green, that came out here when Medical Center of the Marianas bankrupted. He was kind of like a nationally known figure. He was one of the real stars in the bankruptcy bar. And obviously, he made a lot of money coming out here doing that bankruptcy.
Yeah, and I think Frenchie called in this morning to Ray's show and they were talking about properties. And he said the hotel over there in Pago Bay, the Ascension, how do you say it?
It was
the old seminary.
Yeah, the Redemptus Mater.
Redemptus Mater Seminary was sold already.
Yeah,
but all those
proceeds, $6 million went for
to the attorney fees.
Yeah,
incredible.
It is. It really is. Yeah. So, I've talked about establishing a trust and putting the non-essential properties into the trust. Now, I think it's possible. I don't know if this is applicable or not. I don't hold myself out. Believe it or not, I don't hold myself out as a bankruptcy expert. A shocking admission, if there ever were one, that I'm not an expert on everything.
Believe it or not, that just made you a little taller.
Yeah, the only thing I really have a good handle on is my own humility. And I'm pretty proud of that. But it could be that a trust is established and the trust collects rent from the various churches and schools and makes periodic payments to the victims from the corpus of the trust, which is, going to be a pretty, I think they're talking $35 million, and then periodic payments from the trust. That would seem to me to be a pretty good way to go about it. It would be a shame if we lose all our churches and all our schools. I suspect we're going to lose some of them because I think we'll probably have more parishes than what the population really needs for servicing. So I think probably some parishes will be combined, et cetera. And then I heard this morning, him talking about Father D. And it never dawned on me that Father D is archdiocesan property. And I don't know if it is, but that's the way they were talking this morning. I've got to find out if Jose knows. Jose's on the phone right now. But Jose, is Father D archdiocesan property? Does the church own
The
it?
school?
Yeah.
Yes.
It is, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty much, I think every school. I have a question about Barragata San Vicente, the elementary school there, but I think because that was a parochial school, that means owned by or run by the parish.
Oh.
But because the parish is on archdiocesan grounds, it might belong to the archdiocese.
Yeah. Well, if Father D is property of the archdiocese, then there was an interesting suggestion that perhaps the Father D alumni, it's really a proud group, man, the Father D gang, to tell you there are really two kinds of people in the world, Father D alumni and the jealous ones. So, and there are a lot of deep pockets in that group. They might be able to raise enough money to buy it from the church. Good solution. Okay, I've got Frenchie who wants to talk about the archdiocese, and Frenchie probably has forgotten more about it than the two of us will ever learn during the rest of our lifetimes, Jose. So let's head for Wrigley Field. We'll find Frenchie out in the center field bleachers at Wrigley Field, and he'll tell us about the archdiocese.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Attention tailgaters. It's time for you to get a new tail to gate on. It's a fact. They got a 2021 model clearance going on all kinds of your favorite Nissan models, the Rogue Sport, Kicks, Murano, Titan, and they've all got great FM radios so that you can pick up tall tales in the afternoon. 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on Nissan. Zero down magic tailgaters. Learn more by visiting nissanguam.com.
So here we are at Wrigley Field in Chicago, the world's most beautiful ballpark. If you've seen pictures of it, you'll notice that there's ivy-covered walls. It's a really very interesting place. And it's even more interesting today because I've run across our old friend Frenchie out here in the center field bleachers. No game today, Frenchie, but you're always game for a little talk on tall tales, correct?
Yeah, I'm looking for the malls out in the field there and see what's happening. Yeah.
Okay, tell us about the archdiocese, Frenchie.
Yeah, well, this is since last Saturday. This is it. The creditors won their case, and Tim is right. Basically the defense from the archdiocese was very lame and not very efficient. The creditors brought in some very big guns from Minnesota who are specialized in those things. They actually did the bankruptcy case for several dioceses in Minnesota, Duluth, I believe, Crookston, Winona, Rochester, and Minneapolis, St. Paul. So they are on top of their game. They know what they're doing, knew what they had to do, and the defense failed to show. The only way the judge could have ruled for the archdiocese is that if the archdiocese had shown that there was a resulting trust for the parishes and the schools following the properties held in trust by the archbishop, but they were not able to do so for several reasons. One of them was apparently some of the documents have disappeared, and that could be most likely tied up to that bonfire that happened at one time at the Chancery there a few years back. But the answer is, they were not. You have apparently in case law, in order for this to happen, to show a resulting trust, you have to show 3 very specific legal steps, which we were not even able to show 1 out of the 3. So it was dead upon arrival. So now the judge has encouraged all parties to try to settle with Judge Fortis in Hawaii, who is still trying to get the 2 parties to come together. Mr. Tudela, who is one of the survivors, had a very emotional testimony, and so did the Archbishop. And those 2 actually met outside of court and seemed to come to some kind of agreement. And it appears that the Archdiocese is going to try to do their best to have an out-of-court settlement. Now, yesterday, I got a hold of the proposal by the creditors, which include the survivors, of what they would like to happen in the future. And what they are proposing is themselves is to create a trust which would be headed by a trustee who would administer all the properties of the Archdiocese until all the cases have been dismissed by settlement. So this is what they're proposing. It's 138 pages, and it's a lot of legalized. And as you mentioned yourself, the bankruptcy law, it's a very boring and difficult thing to follow. You have to read one file, go back to the evidence, and so on and so forth. But it's a very precise thing going on. They were supposed to meet on the 4th to have the judge's opinion on certain issues. They have pushed it back to the 11th based on a request by both parties, who are trying apparently to settle with Judge Fortis in Hawaii right now. So as we speak, there is still a little light that we might have a window of opportunity that both parties might agree to what is an admissible reparation for the victims, which so far, as Tim pointed, and as I have pointed also in other things, is that the victims have not received anything, and the lawyers are the ones that have filled their pockets. And, the longer that case lasts, and the more the lawyers are going to make. And like you said, you cannot blame them. That's the business they're in. But for the diocese to move on, it's going to be interesting. There was an approach by the finance committee of the Archdiocese to identify non-essential properties that could be sold immediately. That includes the Chancery building, which is worth quite a bit of money. It's a large property up there on the hill. and other property, which include things that are very different, like even the baseball field next to the church in Talafofo. Of course, the mayor is not very pleased about that, but basically this is it. We might have to sell properties and until this is over to pay for the compensation for the victims. And we still do not know what that would be. It looks like most likely the proposal from the creditors will go forward, and that we will have a person that will be elected to administer that, a trustee that will be elected by both parties to administer the new trust until it's all over, and then that the trust comes back to the archdiocese once the case is settled. But it's going to be the next few weeks we will find out what is going on. The latest development, which is a positive one, which is really that the parties have asked the judge to delay the next hearing until the 11th of this month, because they are trying hard to come up to an agreement in the court in Hawaii with Judge Fortis. So that's where we are right now. That's where we are right now.
Frenchie, if Judge his name is Fortis, Fortis?
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah, if and he's volunteered to serve as a mediator, if he can't work out some kind of a settlement and the matter goes to trial, it'll take forever, because
it will take forever
every one of those plaintiffs is entitled to his day in court.
That is correct. And right now there is some of them have dropped off the lawsuits. They have heard what they wanted to hear from the archdiocese, one-on-one meetings and so forth. They were not particularly looking for a financial settlement. They just wanted to have an acknowledgement by the archdiocese that they had been victimized, and they got that. So some of them have settled in that way, but there's still 290 cases or so out of the 300 and almost 400 people that came forward. And then, of course, Apparent is a civil lawsuit is still up for trial, and we do not have a date yet. And there is a few of the victims. You mentioned several of them, the Agathe boys in particular, that are suing him. And, of course, he had plenty of time to hide his assets. And he's in New Jersey, and Mr. Cook was working pro bono for him at the beginning, and then Jackie Taylor took over afterwards.
Hold it, Fritzy.
Yeah.
Jeff Cook was working for Apparent pro bono?
Pro bono at the beginning of the, yeah.
Is there any documentation of that, or?
Yes.
Papers filed in court?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big thing. It's the same Jeff Cook that worked pro bono for Tim's spouse in her kidnapping case of the children to Virgin Island.
Do we know that he worked pro bono?
Yeah.
Wow. And this would be the same Jeff Cook who is the first gentleman right now, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, that is correct. So this raised a lot of question and eyebrows for people that were of a conspiracy theory.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Go ahead, Joe.
Is there? And I know that we're here in Guam. There could be many connections, but that's the husband of the former president of one of the creditors.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. And it's also the largest creditor of the bankruptcy so far. outside of the victims. Now, if you add up all the victims, they will definitely become the largest creditors. But individually, BOG is the largest creditors. And, it's regular, like in a bankruptcy court, it's the regular type of credit. I mean, there are several institutions of the church, schools, some parishes, Our Lady of Guam Academy, for example, which is the governor is an alumni of, who have made loans over the years that are still being repaid, and they are on schedule, the Basilica, things like this. And other banks also have our creditors, but Bank of Hawaii, First Hawaiian, I think. So, it's like you say, Robert. It's if there is no settlement, it will last forever, and most likely the judge will agree to have a trustee appointed to liquidate the appropriate properties from the Archdiocese assets, and that would be very painful for a lot of people, especially the families of those who have given those properties from the get-go, like the mayor of down south would say. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of ache and pains. At the same time, I think a lot of the Catholics on the island realize the wrong that was done to the survivors, and that there needs to be some kind of healing going on, and if that healing is partially made out of financial settlements, that's what it might have to be. But Tim is right, in his column, he's highlighting some of the very strong issues that happen. And of course, some of the priests are dismayed because they feel like the Archbishop was not on top of his game because of personal health issues, and that the people that he trusted to do the job while he was not on top of his game probably didn't do the best job they could. So that is several issues coming up one after the other. No wonder the Archbishop felt he was being dropped off from an helicopter and everybody started shooting at him.
Yeah, I think the Archbishop thought he was going to go to a beautiful tropical island and spend some time on the beach, and the reality was that he rappelled in from a helicopter into a combat zone.
Yeah, exactly. And he was being shot at from every direction.
Yeah, from the get-go.
Yeah, from the get-go. So this is a situation we're in now. Today is Lent, the beginning of Lent. So I guess we have a lot of things to think about as Catholics on the island, and even for non-Catholics around the island. There are several other cases going on. The Adventists are being sued also for the similar issues, and several other groups. So the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, everybody. So it's not just a Catholic issue. It's an island issue.
But if you do a per capita analysis, the number of victims we had here against our total population makes
huge.
Makes what look like in Boston it's just kind of a minor irritation.
It makes Boston and Los Angeles look like a picnic in the park.
Exactly.
Per capita, it's a huge number. Yeah, it's huge. It's amazing.
And it's really hard to analyze it without bringing an awful lot of it back home to one person.
Oh, yeah.
And helped by a couple more.
Even though it started before he was in charge.
Yes.
He was fully aware, he was a party of it, and he was fully aware of it and did all his best to cover up and to destroy the people that were trying to show what was happening.
Exactly.
And I think that the wounds are still very deep, and it will take a while. But like I said in one of my columns, the church has been destroyed several times by the war, physically, and they rebuilt, and then by tsunamis and typhoon, and it was rebuilt. And I think it will rebuild again because there are a lot of very good people that are willing to do what's right. But in the meantime, it's very painful for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Well, Frenchie, I got to go to Churchill Downs. I'm really glad we were able to link up there in Wrigley Field. Very good. Good testimony on your part as usual. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Robert, and try to have a good Lent.
Try to do it. So long. Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs, and we're going to come back and find out what's on another Joe's mind.
Hafa Day. I'm the owner of Guam's largest tourist attraction group. The pandemic's been very tough for all of us, and particularly for my team members. So I'm really appreciative and grateful for the PUA assistance to our team members, and more recently, the SVOG federal grant that allowed us to reopen these facilities and re-employ everyone at a critical time when PUA ended. From myself and my team, on behalf of all of us, thank you for the federal funds that allowed us to reopen.
The federal fund you provide saved many, many jobs. Thank you. Thank you so much.
We employ about 35 technicians for our shows. Thank you for the federal funds that kept us going.
Thank you for helping with the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for helping to save our jobs.
Thank you for the federal funds.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Churchill Downs in Louisville. Another 7 minutes, and I'll be crossing that finish line for another exciting, educational, elucidating episode of Tall Tales. I noticed from looking at my stack here, Jose, that another Joe has a celebrity alert. Maybe he just wants to tell me offline? Unless he's thinking of another celebrity besides me. Maybe he is. Are you thinking of a different celebrity other than the host of Tall Tales, another Joe?
Uncle Bob, the leading actors, the first Spider-Man from the movie theaters, on-screen, big-screen movie theaters, Tobey Maguire, and the guy from Titanic, Leonardo DiCaprio, the word of mouth is they're on Guam for who knows for how long. But I think that would be awesome if you can get them on your program or Ray's program.
For those two guys, it would really be good for their careers, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be awesome. He's almost as tall as you, Uncle Bob.
Tobey Maguire? Certainly not that DiCaprio punk.
Well, but you get a lot of ratings because the girls go from right. The women of all ages seem to like the Titanic. Great, it was full. The theater was full of women. Anyway, Bob, I just wanted to mention that much and see if we can get them on your program or Ray's program. Right. Thanks for your time, Bob.
We don't have very many guests here on Tall Tales. I'm very, very selective of who is allowed to appear on Tall Tales. Maybe one of them, but that's about as far as I'd want to go. And even then, it depends on what's on the card that day. But thanks for the tip, another Joe.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
Yeah, I don't know. Leonardo DiCaprio.
It would be good for your 16 to 35 demographic of females.
Yeah, I suppose. And I know there are in abundance out there in international radio listening audience.
And another Joe.
And another Joe, yes, yeah.
What I hear is that they're here for the USO tour, and there might be some other people coming here also. There's a whole bunch of Navy. What is the word? Seamen are on the island because of a carrier. Sailors.
Yeah.
I was never in the Navy.
Seamen, you're thinking of gynecology, I think, instead of the Navy.
Ouch.
Yeah, so there are a lot
persons.
Yeah, of course. There are a lot of sailors on the island.
Sailors, yes.
Yeah. I understand that there's some movement in the Defense Department to rename the Navy. Yeah. They're going to call it the MCTS.
What's that?
Marine Corps Transportation Service.
Very good.
Seems right to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
But let's get back to Leo. I don't understand why he's here. Wasn't he the star of Titanic?
He was indeed. Yeah.
That ship didn't make it.
That's right. Yeah. It wasn't his highest moment, was it? He kind of went down with the ship.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Okay, I got about 6 minutes to go. 5 minutes to go. I have next item on the card here is the 36th Guam Legislature versus the kids. I kind of covered that in the editorial, but I think it's going to be worth watching because I expect extreme pandering to come out of this. That when this bill gets to the floor, every single person there, with maybe 2 or 3 exceptions, is going to stand up and talk about children and how education is their top priority. Every single one of them will make the unbelievable claim that they were once upon a time kids themselves. For some of them, that's just not going to be very credible. And there will be a tremendous effort to pander to the younger folks, even though they can't vote. But, once you get started to pander, I think it's probably pretty hard for them to turn off. And then, of course, they've all got to repeat their campaign slogan, for me, education has always been my top priority. How many days of school are we not going to make up to? Only 24? Oh, it could be a lot worse. I'm for the kids on this, yeah. That's what's going to happen as far as my read of the tea leaves is concerned. And I suppose there's no way to get in front of it. But, one of the things that ought to be taught in our schools is the definition of the word priority. If something is a priority, that means it comes ahead of everything else. I've seen us reschedule the whole school year because of the South Pacific Games. Yeah. This is 15, 20 years ago. Because we're having the South Pacific Games and we needed to use all the education facilities, we had to start school later to accommodate the South Pacific Games. And of course, sometimes we can't, when we have storms, we can't start school right away because we got to use the schools for storm shelters, right? And now this, education's our top priority, but why we shouldn't punish the kids because they missed the school. It wasn't their fault. Well, having them go to school, giving them that opportunity is not punishment.
Yeah, when you call it a punishment, then no kidding.
Yeah. But I think you'll see that this kind of lingo coming out of the legislature when this bill gets to the floor. And, of course, they don't have a whole lot of time to get there. Okay, so that's it for another exciting episode of Tall Tales. I'll probably have a few remarks about Brandon's State of the Union address tomorrow. But until then, let's go, Brandon.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM, and 104.3 HD3. 104.3 HD3.
Day 7 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine on Jack Callahan, Fox News. Air raid sirens sounding in the capital of Kiev as more Russian rockets rain down. But Fox's Jonathan Hunt reports 2 other Ukrainian cities are being targeted by the Russians.
They seem to be focusing right now on the eastern city of Kharkiv and the southern city of Mariupol as they try to gain control over other areas of Ukraine, presumably with the object of allowing them then to move further towards Kyiv and surround it from all sides.
That huge Russian convoy is still north of Kiev, but it hasn't moved in more than 24 hours, triggering some speculation that reluctant Russian troops may have sabotaged their own equipment. President Biden, in last night's State of the Union speech, said the U.S. stands with Ukraine.
President Biden says Russia's aggression in Ukraine will be punished as signs of Russian wealth abroad will be sought out and seized. Also, access to the West will be cut off.
We will join our allies in closing off American airspace to all Russian flights.
The president said, as dire as things seem, the world is coming together and will make things right.
When the history of this era is written, Putin's war in Ukraine will have left Russia weaker and the rest of the world stronger.
A statement that drew applause from both sides of the political aisle.
Fox's Gernal Scott, the president said reducing high costs for Americans has become his top priority and said his stalled federal spending plan would accomplish that. He also promised to fight the crime wave with anti-crime programs and called on Congress to ban so-called assault weapons. But Americans continue to pay more at the gas pump. AAA says the average price of a gallon of gas in the U.S. is nearly $3.62. Bound to go higher as Brent crude oil tops $111 a barrel in overnight trading. America is listening to Fox News.
Jason in the House, the Jason Chaffetz podcast. There is always someone doing something stupid somewhere. Dive deeper than the headlines and the party lines as I take on American life, politics, and entertainment. Join me, Jason Chaffetz, every Wednesday as I shed light on the news and make some predictions along the way. You never know who will drop in. Subscribe now on foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts.
Connect to Fox News Audio on the Fox News app. Listen to hear your favorite hosts like Brian Kilmeade, Jimmy Fallon, and Guy Benson standing up for what's right, live and via podcast. Just click listen, then swipe right and hear the latest news updates on your time. And scroll down to hear the latest podcasts from Fox News. And it's even easier to listen in the car with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Get programming alerts and notifications. Fox News Audio is on the Fox News app. The voices America trusts. Download it now.
The White House later this morning planning to unveil its wide-ranging strategy for the next phase of pandemic response, expected to lay out how public health restrictions can be eased safely to restore